Professor Friedman's presentation titled that South Africa's labor relations system has dismally failed to address the needs of the poor. Well, I suppose the system was not primarily designed to address the needs of the poorest. Rather, the system was designed to protect and strengthen the rights and conditions of the workers in the labor market. And I would argue that it largely achieved that to a certain point, with well-organized union sectors in the lead, although with a spillover benefit to less organized workers. And by the way, many of these workers in employment should be considered as poor. But yes, many categories of the poor people are excluded from the industrial relations system. The unemployed, the informal sector, atypical, precarious and gig workers. Indeed, the latter are excluded from the very definition of the employee or worker in the relevant legislation. And it's something we have to think about now. By the way, this phenomenon was highlighted during the pandemic when the stark reality of exclusion of these categories I've mentioned from the social protection system, the UIF in this case, was all too evident. And it was at this point that government had to initiate what was called the COVID social grants, perhaps a reminder that poverty is an all-over of society, it's an all of society's responsibility. The matter of exclusion from the social protection safety net was taken up by NETLEC, and we anticipate proposals during the current year. A more general point I want to make is that the tendency to pit organized and unorganized labor against each other is not helpful. I'm not accusing anybody here of doing this. As I said, I've not been present at the other sessions. Organized workers who have barely achieved a living wage do not compromise some kind of labor aristocracy, and weakening this group will not lead to automatically to improvements for the poor on the margins of the society and the labor market. It may even do the reverse. But it was important to raise the issue, and I repeat, the unacceptable levels of poverty is a societal responsibility. And yes, it is an important question to ask as to how this intersects with the industrial relations system, and where can we create interconnections between the system of collective bargaining, the informal sector, and the need for a much broader social protection safety net. I think this is a very, very important point. And from the side of the organized labor, which has been losing ground over the last 10 years or more, their question will be, how do we strengthen our position in the collective bargaining system? Mr. Duplessis of the Solidarity offers the perspective that this might be an opportunity for unions to re-emerge as a united force. I've no idea as to the timing of this, but on a general point, he is correct. The key to trade union strength is unity, and of course numbers, which in turn relies on effective organization. But to the unionist here, Comrade Jim, and all your colleagues who are here, we are seeing the emergence or proliferation of many unions in same sectors. Is it helping then the workers' cause, or is it self-interest of some who want to lead? Or is it about the poor? Or is it because of the poor service delivery to the workers when unions have so many full-time shop stewards released by the employer? I'll leave that for another day when I'm with the unions, because I would love to raise it in some of the political schools which they have. Solidarity is right on this one, but wrong morally and factually regarding the recently amended Employment Equity Act. And apologies to you, SEIFSA, if I spend a few minutes addressing this very topical issue. It's very topical now, the issue of the employment equity. The original EEA of 1998 was an attempt to implement the constitutional requirements to bring about equity and equal opportunity in the workplace. And it was left to the goodwill of the employers to implement on a voluntary basis. Unfortunately, the annual reports of the Commission for Employment Equity continue to indicate that change was at best extremely low, especially at the high levels of management. This particularly to the cost of Africans, the colors, the women, and people with disabilities. And it was for this reason that the amendments were drawn. They were drawn up to encourage employers to comply. And what do amendments change? They change the following. The minister is empowered in consultation with all the relevant stakeholders to set specific EE sectoral targets. Guidelines have been drawn up and provisional targets agreed. And this was after consultation with the stakeholders. It was never unilateral, even on the guidelines. And the purpose is to support equitable representation of suitable qualified people at all levels from the designated groups. And the amended Act also promulgates Section 53 of the EEA, which already existed for the issuing of the EE compliance certificate as a prerequisite for access to state contracts and doing business with any organ of the state. The state has the right to expect that businesses we do business with comply with the law. That's what is expected. How do you do business with somebody who doesn't want to comply with the law but wants to profit from the state? Unfortunately, some political parties, with a view to driving the wedge between the ethnic groups and ask whether the national original demographics are to be reflected in the targets. In fact, the law allows employers to choose whether to report nationally or provincially. If the company chooses to report provincially, it uses the provincial EAP, that is the economically active population figures, that is published together with the national EAP by the Statistics South Africa. What is the main issue from some of the political parties? Amazing how those who benefited most from the racial privilege under apartheid are first to accuse others of racial quotas, reverse racism.